Hello again, mixed martial arts fans, and welcome to MMAfighting.com's preview of UFC 192. We're deep in the heart of Texas, Houston, Texas, to be exact. We're inside the Toyota Center site of Saturday night's pay-per-view card, headlined by Daniel Cormier versus Alexander Gustafsson for the UFC light heavyweight title. I'm Ariel Helwani. That is Dave Doyle. Dave, I got to tell you, looking at this 13-pack of fights, it really is, in my opinion, the deepest card of the year. Each and every single one of these fights, there's an intriguing aspect to it. You could find some interesting storylines, interesting fighter, things of that nature. Do you agree with my assessment? And if so, what's your favorite part of the whole card?
Absolutely. And it's not just that, but there's been so much hype about the fights coming up later in the year, UFC 194, 195, and so on, that I think this has fallen a little bit under the radar. Maybe it's because there isn't, a Conor McGregor or a Ronda Rousey hyping things up. But if you actually look at the card from top to bottom, everything's so consequential. Everything means something. Everything's going to lead to something within the division. It's kind of hard to pick from, there's just so much depth and so many fights that mean things.
It's also interesting because it feels like you have something for everyone, right? You have like super duper rising stars like Sage Northcutt, who we'll talk about in a second. You got contender fights, of course, Tyron Woodley and Johnny Hendricks, a title fight. I mean, there really is something. Obviously, Juliana Pena and Jessica Eye is a very important fight. I love the way this card has been built. And originally, when this main event was first announced, it received some criticism, and I think rightfully so. Someone who gets knocked out typically doesn't get a title shot. Are you over that at this point, or does that still kind of linger when you think about this card?
It's there a little bit, but when push comes to shove, let's kind of address the elephant in the room here. John Jones was back in the news this week, and regardless of what happens in this fight, in the main event, he's got a ready-made rematch, assuming that John, it is actually his head's in a good place and he's ready to return soon. So I think somehow that just kind of pushes things forward, Maybe they could have gone with Ryan Bader, who knows? But, ultimately, again, because of the way everything's just kind of panned out and the news has come together, I think you just kind of let go of why this fight was made and just kind of, see where it takes us from here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I do feel like they couldn't have scripted this better and not to make light of the John Jones situation. That is real life. That is serious stuff. But for his hearing to happen on the Tuesday before the light heavyweight title fight, the timing is perfect for the UFC. And I kind of feel like it has raised the level of interest going into this main event. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, look, Daniel, I've been following Daniel all week since he had a media luncheon in Los Angeles on Monday, and he's being asked about John Jones every single step along the way, and he's made it clear that, well, he considers himself the legitimate champion because John, to use DC's words, disqualified himself from the competition, that he knows that he's, on some level, that he's never going to be considered, just 100% fully the champion until he gets back in the cage with John. So, yeah, I agree.
What's the bigger rematch for the UFC? The bigger money-making rematch, if you will. Is it Cormier Jones 2 or Gustafsson Jones 2?
It got to be Cormier and Jones, just because it was such a huge fight. Gustafsson and Jones was a well-remembered, well-regarded, one of the greatest fights ever, but it really didn't become a huge fight until after the fact. Right. If it wasn't their biggest selling fight, I think there would be interest in that fight, but, if you look at the paths that both DC and Gustafsson have gone on since then, I think DC's a hotter fighter. DC's on Fox every week. People know him. People are familiar with him. Alex kind of shows up once or twice a year and goes home, so I think that would be the bigger fight.
I'm assuming that you watched the Japan card last week and you saw those promos for this fight card. A lot of emphasis on the height and reach advantage. I have said on my show I wasn't a huge fan of those promos. What did you make of it, and in particular the promotion of this particular fight?
Well, where else were we going to go with the promotion, I guess? It does seem like it's
Is it nitpicky on my part?
No, I guess I see both sides of it because, how else are you go? It's kind of the lazy way to promote Gustafsson. Oh, hey, the guy's tall, he has a reach advantage, but I'm not sure what else you would have done with it.
So how do you feel about Gustafsson going into this fight? in terms of what you expect from him, because usually when you go into a title fight, usually you're riding a 3, 4, 5, 6 fight winning streak. He's coming off the worst loss of his career by far. He was knocked out in front of his people in the dead of night, Stockholm. It was incredibly embarrassing and painful for him. And his return fight is not a tune-up fight. It's a title fight. So what do you expect?
So I'm going to put this in terms you can understand, Ariel.
Yes, please.
Every year, the Buffalo Bills convince themselves that this is the year they're going to beat the New England Patriots. And every year, as soon as the Patriots push back, the Bills kind of crumble.
Okay.
And
I can't believe you're going there. Please, proceed.
And we've seen this, Alex in his biggest moments. I mean, that fight in January was just ready-made for him to make him a superstar in his hometown. And as soon as Rumble hit him, it looked like Alex didn't really want to be there. And if you look at some of his other, sure, he put in a valiant performance against Jones, but Jones found that something extra when when it mattered. If you even go back to his fight with Mr. Wonderful, he submitted with 5 seconds left in the round. So I think, DC has been questioning, just like I kind of did there, I guess, Gustafsson's heart in those situations. And this is kind of like, I feel like this is the big put up or shut up fight of his career.
Yeah, I'm wondering what kind of a wounded animal Gustafsson is. Is he the wounded animal that's about to just kind of lay down and call it quits, or is he the wounded animal that's going to keep fighting and try to regain past glory? You don't know the answer to that question, but I think that's an intriguing that's turning this negative of him getting a title shot after a knockout loss into a positive. That is what makes it intriguing to me in a weird way.
Absolutely. And, I'm kind of skipping ahead here to the prediction, but ultimately I think DC is just a little bit in his head and a little more cooler and a little more composed under pressure. But, this is Alex's time to show idiots like me that I don't know what I'm talking about.
All right, so how do you see the fight playing out?
If Alex is able to, Alex's best chance is, I know this is kind of obvious, but Alex's best chance is to actually go ahead and use that reach and keep it a stand-up fight and hopefully, keep up the pressure and tag him and wear him down. But we saw Daniel Cormier take Anthony Johnson's best punch and roll with it and get back up, and that just made him angrier and made him a better fighter. So I don't know, ultimately, I see DC using his wrestling to, who knows, maybe even set up a submission after he wears him down the way he did against Rumble.
So here's the situation. At this point in the preview show, we were going to talk about the great co-main event between Johnny Hendricks and Tyron Woodley. But we found out this morning, Friday morning, that fight's not happening anymore. What happened was this. Late last night, Johnny Hendricks was rushed to the hospital. He suffered from kidney stones and intestinal blockage, severely dehydrated. He will not be able to fight. He's been ruled out of the fight. The good news for Tyron Woodley, the silver lining, if you will, is that he got his show money. He did make weight. He wanted to make that official for everyone to see. And Dana White said that if all works according to plan for Tyron Woodley, he will get a title shot. But there's a bit of an asterisk there. We'll see what happens. I want to talk to you about this whole situation because yesterday we previewed this fight when we were doing our preview show. You were very excited, talking about, it's a coin flip, it's a great fight, all that stuff. Now what do you make of it all?
What do you say? Like yesterday, looking at Johnny at the media day, you would have never guessed. He looked a little on the bigger side, but you never would have guessed something like this was about to happen. Hendricks has to have a real honest little evaluation with himself because he's had weight issues in the past. He's had terrible weight cuts, and maybe if we may not have specifically seen it coming yesterday, but this was going to come eventually. He has just years and years and years going all the way back to his wrestling days of weight cutting, and he's not getting any younger, and he's going to have to seriously consider going up to middleweight.
The problem is, I feel like he's too small for middleweight, right?
Yeah, but what do you do? What do you do in this situation? You do say too small for middleweight, but on the other hand, I'd like to think as we kind of evolve with weight cutting in the sport, look at the success Anthony Johnson has had since he stopped trying to cut too low. Sure. Look at even John Lineker at bantamweight. Maybe fighters will stop trying to cut to the absolute lowest their bodies can possibly handle.
Yeah, and he's had these issues before, as you said. Recently parted ways with Mike Dolce. And say what you want about Mike Dolce. I know BJ Penn made a lot of headlines this week. He's never had a fighter miss weight under his watch. And it's his second fight without Dolce. Made weight back in March. This time, of course, did not make weight. And I spoke to him today. Obviously very upset, very disappointed. Said he's going to consider moving up to 185. Dana White said he wants him to move up to 185. Ultimately, it has to be his choice. But Here we are once again, Johnny Hendricks with weight cutting issues. Now let's talk about Tyron Woodley, because this is a guy who hasn't fought since January 31st. And remember, he dealt with this situation back in that fight as well. Kelvin Gastelum missed weight, but he did fight. 10 pounds over, but he did fight. Anyhow, now Tyron Woodley is coming back from a broken foot, has been wanting this fight, campaigning for this fight, finally so close to getting that rematch, avenging that loss 10 years ago on the college wrestling scene, and he doesn't get the fight. Dana White says he'll probably get a title shot. We'll see what happens. What do you do if you're Woodley? Because he's only getting his show money as of right now. The title fight, the next title fight's in early January. Are you going to wait a year and a half to fight again?
That's a tough decision. That's one he's going to have to make. You know, I mean, part of it is, look, we all know how much a Dana White promised title shot actually means in the long run. So you have to factor that into account. You have to factor, you know, I mean, at what point you don't want to get rusty. You don't want to sit out too long. You know, Rory McDonald's going to be ready to fight eventually, right? That might make for an interesting rematch. But, you know, I mean, I can't make that decision for him. But, yeah, he has a big decision to make.
Standard procedure for the UFC in this situation has always been you get your show money. But he made a very good argument to me earlier today. He said, look, if I would have gone into this fight and got knocked out in the first minute, I would receive my show money. Why don't I deserve my win money? I did everything that I was asked of. I made the weight. I'm here. I'm ready to fight. I haven't fought since January. Who knows when I'll fight again? I deserve my win money. Do you agree with him?
Yeah, I agree. The UFC should take care of him in this. You know, Tyrone, not only has Tyrone not done anything wrong, but he accepted that fight with Gastelum when Gastelum missed by a horrible amount of weight. So he's been a good soldier for the company. He's done everything right. And even, you know, he was a professional and he stepped on the scale and stuck with his weight cut and got it done. So I think Dana should do the right thing for Tyron.
Yeah, and he's been acting like a professional all day long, kind of biting his tongue. You could tell he's very upset. He's wanted this fight for a long time. And he even told me just moments ago, look, my foot that I broke isn't really 100%. I kind of rushed into this because I wanted this fight and this opportunity so badly. Now here he is without a fight in Houston, Friday night. What a bummer for Tyron Woodley. All right, so that's the bad news. The good news is, I guess, he gets his show money. He's maybe getting a title shot. Now, Rashad Evans versus Ryan Bader is the new co-main event. It's still a very deep card. It's now just 12 deep. So now that we're done with all this bad news, let's go back to our regularly scheduled preview show that we taped Thursday afternoon. And how about the fascinating Rashad Evans versus Ryan Bader fight? And I don't know if you spoke to Ryan Bader before, but I mean, you talk about a chip on your shoulder. He's heard everything that Daniel and Rashad have been saying about him, trying to put him down, make light of his career, saying that he's an easy fight, all that stuff. He seems different. He seems really pissed off going into it. And you have an amazing story of Rashad Evans coming back after a 2-year layoff, essentially, 2 knee surgeries. I mean, you know, who knew if he was ever going to come back? And it's a very important fight. I mean, John Jones or not, it's a very important fight. Are you as high on this matchup as I am? And B, who are you favoring?
I love it. It's been awesome listening to Rashad talk this week, to hear how much his career has meant to him and how much almost having it all taken away. You know, just he was really emotional at times this week. So it's you don't often get to see, you know, this. Fighters' finishes can be a little ugly sometimes, so it's good to see that Rashad was able to push through this and just get back to this stage. And I think the question is, you know, after being out for 2 years, are we going to see the Rashad who kind of ragdolled Chael Sonnen in his last fight, or we get, you know, does the tentative guy who inexplicably lost that fight, the little nog, show up? So to me, it comes down to which Rashad Evans shows up. And I'm having a tough time with this one, too, I have to admit.
I'm really curious to see if Ryan can rise to the occasion. We talked about Gustafsson and Woodley, to a degree, stumbling in the big fights. You could say the same for Ryan Bader. Yes, he's on a 4-fight winning streak, I believe, but it seems like every time he gets to this point, he stumbles as well. I think this is a good opportunity for him to get over that hump because he's fighting a fellow wrestler, but also a guy who's coming off of that long layoff and the surgeries. To me, there are so many interesting questions surrounding both men. That's why I love the fight so much.
And he's also, I mean, you know, this Ryan Bader's more well-rounded and more mature than the guy who reached the John Jones fight back a few years ago, or the guy who went rushing in against Lyoto Machida. That's not the same Ryan Bader, or at least we think that's not the same Ryan Bader. So I don't know. I guess maybe I'm old.
Pick one.
Yeah, I'm a softie. I got to go with Rashad in this story.
Ruslan Magomedov, Sean Jordan, your pick?
I will never pick against a guy with my physique who can do backflips. Sean Jordan.
Very well said. Juliana Pena versus Jessica Ai.
Love this fight, and I'm not sure what to think. It's a great kind of proving ground fight for Juliana because Jessica has been right there on the cusp for so long, but never quite, gotten over the hump. I'm just going to go with a hunch on Juliana. She's a finisher. Jessica took a pretty nasty beating from Misha Tate just a couple months ago. So go with the Vixen.
We can talk about each and every one of these fights in depth, get your prediction, all that stuff. We won't do that because we're running out of time. But I do want to get your take on Sage Northcutt, the 19-year-old Texan who's 5-0, making his UFC debut. And boy, are they pushing him. He was featured on the new Dana White reality show, Looking for a Fight. They brought him to the open workouts. You were there. He's wide-eyed, but he's a good-looking kid, the great physique, says all the right things, and most importantly, he can fight. He is a great fighter. Have you been impressed with him thus far?
First of all, let's just call him what everyone else is calling him, the male Paige Van Zandt.
Very nice.
Yeah, but no, it was a quite impressive show yesterday, and it was just there's something refreshing about his attitude. He was calling everyone sir in a scrum. I mean, what's not to like? You see, Dana White talked for so many years about the type of athletes that are going to come into the sport in the next generation, who are, the well-rounded, just incredible athletes. And I think this, he and Paige are kind of representative of that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to his debut very much. All right, we are done. I have to go find my voice. I have lost it. I need to regain that thing because I'm struggling here. But you know what's the beautiful thing about this card? It hasn't been rammed down our throats. But if you actually look at it and study it, I really, truly believe that it is the most deep card of the year. It has something for everyone. It's really interesting, and I can't wait to take it all in Saturday night right here in the Toyota Center. All right, we're done. That is Dave. I am Ariel. Stay tuned for our coverage all fight night long. We'll be back with you on Saturday night. Thanks for watching.